I'd been a stepmom for 3 years, loving a shy 11-year-old boy who was afraid to love me back. His toxic mother poisoned every moment of progress we made, and I never fought back. I just kept showing up with patience and kindness. Then one Tuesday, she showed up screaming at me in our driveway, and my quiet stepson did something that changed everything. He said 5 words I'll never forget. Before we dive in, I'm curious, what was your family setup like growing up? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you love stories about blended families, chosen love, and children finding their courage, please subscribe so you don't miss our next one. Now let me take you back to the day my stepson finally found his voice. I met Scott Green at a community theater production 2 years after his divorce was finalized. I was working backstage on costumes, and he'd volunteered to help with set construction, both of us looking for something to fill our evenings. He was kind, funny, had calloused hands from his job as a contractor, and talked about his 7-year-old son Kyle with the kind of unguarded love that told me everything I needed to know about his character. We dated for a year before I met Kyle. Scott was cautious, protective, wanting to be sure our relationship was serious before introducing another person into his son's already complicated life. When I finally met Kyle at a neutral location, a children's museum Scott knew he loved, I was struck by how quiet he was. Not the comfortable quiet of a content child, but the watchful, careful quiet of someone who'd learned that speaking up could have consequences. "Hi, Kyle," I'd said, crouching down to his level. "Your dad tells me you're really good at building with Legos. I'm terrible at it. Everything I build falls apart. Maybe you could teach me sometime." He'd looked at his father for permission before nodding slightly. "Okay," he'd whispered. That was the beginning. I didn't push, didn't try to force a relationship, didn't attempt to be his mother or replace anyone. I just showed up. To his soccer games, to school events when Scott couldn't make it, to quiet Saturday afternoons where we'd build Lego sets together while Scott made dinner. Slowly, carefully, Kyle began to relax around me. Scott and I married when Kyle was 9. By then, Kyle had started smiling around me, occasionally initiating conversations, even hugging me goodnight without prompting. It felt like progress. It felt like we were becoming a family. But there was always the shadow of Vanessa. Vanessa Reed, Kyle's mother and Scott's ex-wife, had not taken their divorce well, even though she'd been the one to file. According to Scott, their marriage had been troubled for years. Vanessa was volatile, controlling, and had a way of making everything about her emotions and needs. When Kyle was 5, she told Scott she wasn't happy and wanted out. The divorce that followed was bitter and expensive. The custody arrangement gave Vanessa alternating weekends and Wednesday evening dinners with Kyle. Legally, they had joint custody with Scott as the primary custodial parent, meaning Kyle lived with us during the school week and most of the time, while Vanessa had him roughly 6 days a month. And those 6 days a month were enough to undo weeks of progress. Every time Kyle returned from his mother's house, he was different. Withdrawn, anxious, he'd avoid eye contact with me, give one-word answers, and retreat to his room. It would take days, sometimes the entire week, for him to relax again, to remember that our house was safe, that he didn't have to walk on eggshells. Scott said Vanessa seemed happy with the custody arrangement, until I came into the picture. Suddenly, she wasn't happy about Kyle living with his dad day to day. "What does she say to him?" I asked Scott one night after Kyle had come home from a weekend at Vanessa's, particularly upset. "He won't talk to me anymore. He flinches when I try to hug him." Scott's jaw tightened. "I don't know exactly. Kyle won't tell me, but I can guess. Vanessa has never accepted our divorce, never accepted that I've moved on, and she definitely hasn't accepted you." That was an understatement. From the moment Vanessa learned Scott was dating someone seriously, her hostility had been palpable. At custody exchanges, she'd make pointed comments. "Oh, Lauren's here, trying to play mommy again?" she'd say with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Or, "Kyle, honey, You know you don't have to listen to her, right? She's not actually family. Or, my personal favorite, must be nice, Lauren, getting a ready-made family without having to do any of the hard work of actually raising a child. I never responded. Scott would handle it, firmly but briefly, and we'd get Kyle into the car and leave. Engaging with Vanessa only gave her what she wanted: conflict, drama, proof that I was the villain in whatever narrative she'd constructed. But the comments at exchanges were nothing compared to what I suspected she was saying to Kyle in private. I started noticing patterns. Kyle would come home from Vanessa's house and suddenly refuse his favorite meals, the ones I cooked, not the ones Scott made. He'd ignore the birthday gifts I'd carefully chosen, but proudly show off something Vanessa had given him. He'd tense up when I asked about his day. The breaking point came one Wednesday evening after dinner at Vanessa's. Kyle came home, went straight to his room, and when Scott went to check on him, we could hear crying through the door. Scott came downstairs 20 minutes later, his face tight, with barely controlled anger. We need to talk. We sat in the kitchen, and Scott kept his voice low so Kyle wouldn't overhear. Vanessa told him that you're trying to replace her, that you're manipulating me, and that the only reason I married you was because I needed someone to help raise Kyle since she wasn't around enough. She told him that every time he calls you by your first name, every time he hugs you or spends time with you, he's betraying his real family. I felt like I'd been punched. She said that to an 11-year-old? She's been saying versions of that for 3 years, apparently. Kyle finally broke down and told me tonight because she said if he really loved her, he'd tell me he didn't want to live with us anymore. She wanted him to ask to change the custody arrangement so he could live with her full-time. Oh my God, Scott, that's parental alienation. I know. I called my lawyer tonight. We're documenting everything. But documentation and legal processes move slowly, and in the meantime, Kyle was caught in the middle. A sweet, sensitive child being systematically taught that loving me meant betraying his mother. I decided that night that I would never, ever speak badly about Vanessa in front of Kyle, no matter what she said about me. I would never force him to choose. I would never compete. I would simply be consistent, loving, and safe. If Kyle eventually decided he trusted me, it would be because of who I was, not because I'd torn down his mother. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done.
Over the next year, Vanessa's behavior escalated. She'd forget to send Kyle's homework back, forcing me to scramble to help him recreate assignments. She'd schedule activities during Scott's custody time, then tell Kyle that if he really wanted to come, he'd ask his dad to change the schedule. She made snide comments during every exchange, each one designed to undermine me while staying just barely on the acceptable side of the custody agreement. Kyle's anxiety increased. His grades started slipping. His therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Bianca Mills, who specialized in children of divorce, said Kyle was experiencing what she called loyalty conflict. He loved his life with us, but felt guilty about that love because his mother had convinced him it was a betrayal. The best thing you can do, Dr. Mills told Scott and me during a session without Kyle, is keep being exactly what you're being: stable, consistent, non-reactive to his mother's provocations. Kyle needs to see that loving you doesn't require him to stop loving her, and that you won't punish him for having complicated feelings. But what if he never... I couldn't finish the sentence. What if he never felt safe enough to show me affection? What if Vanessa's poison worked and Kyle grew up resenting me? Children are perceptive. They know who shows up for them. They know who makes them feel safe. Trust the process. Trust Kyle. So I did. I kept showing up. I kept making his favorite breakfast on school mornings. I kept helping with homework. I kept attending every soccer game, every school concert, every parent-teacher conference. I kept hugging him goodnight, even when he stiffened. I kept telling him I loved him, even when he didn't say it back. And I did all this because I really wanted not just to earn his trust or to make him like me. but because it brought me true joy to be around him and make his life a little better every day. And slowly, there were moments of breakthrough. A spontaneous hug after I'd stayed up late helping him with a science project. A genuine laugh at one of my terrible jokes. The day he asked if I wanted to play video games with him. Not because Scott had suggested it, but because he wanted my company. These moments were precious and fragile, and every time Kyle went to his mother's house, I braced myself for them to be undone. Then came the Tuesday that changed everything. It was late October, a Tuesday afternoon. Scott was at a job site, and Kyle was home with me. It wasn't Vanessa's custody day. Kyle and I were in the kitchen making cookies, one of the few activities where he seemed completely relaxed. He was carefully measuring flour while I preheated the oven, and we were listening to his favorite playlist. The doorbell rang. I glanced at Kyle, who looked as confused as I felt. We weren't expecting anyone. Through the front window, I could see a car in the driveway, Vanessa's car. My stomach tightened. Kyle, honey, keep measuring. I'll see who it is. But Kyle had already seen his mother's car. His face went pale, and the measuring cup trembled in his hands. I opened the door to find Vanessa standing on our porch, her expression cold and determined. She was dressed professionally. She worked in real estate. But there was something manic in her eyes that immediately put me on guard. "I'm here to pick up Kyle," she announced without preamble. "Vanessa, it's Tuesday. This isn't your custody day. There's a family emergency. I need to take him now." I kept my voice calm, even though my heart was racing. "What kind of emergency? Is everyone okay?" "That's none of your business. Kyle is my son. I'm taking him."
I understand he's your son, but the custody agreement specifies which days Kyle is with you. If there's a genuine emergency, you need to discuss it with Scott first. He's at work, but I can call him. I'm not discussing anything with Scott, and I'm certainly not discussing it with you. Her voice was rising. You have no authority over my child. You're nothing. You're just some woman who married my ex-husband. Now get Kyle and send him out here. I could see neighbors starting to look out their windows. "Vanessa, I can't authorize a change to the custody schedule. You know that. If you'd like to call Scott and discuss the emergency with him, I'm happy to wait with Kyle until you two work it out." "You're keeping my son from me." Her voice had become a shout. "You've been trying to turn him against me since the day you showed up. You're a manipulator, a homewrecker. I met Scott 2 years after your divorce was finalized. I'm not—" "Don't interrupt me." She was screaming now, stepping closer, her face red with rage. "You think you can just waltz into my son's life and replace me? You think you can make him love you more than his own mother? You're poisoning him against his real family, and I won't stand for it anymore." I stayed calm, though my hands were shaking. "Vanessa, you're upset. I understand that, but you need to leave. We can discuss this with Scott when he gets home, but right now, you need to go." "I'm not going anywhere without my son." "Mom." The small voice came from behind me. Kyle had moved to the doorway, his face pale, his body trembling. "Mom, there's no emergency, is there?" Vanessa's expression shifted, became pleading. "Kyle, honey, come here. Come with Mommy. We'll go get ice cream. Just the two of us. You don't have to stay here with her." Kyle didn't move. He was staring at his mother with an expression I'd never seen before. Not fear exactly, but something like recognition. Like he was finally seeing something clearly for the first time. "There's no emergency," he repeated, his voice stronger. "You just want to take me on a day that's not yours. Kyle, don't be disrespectful. I'm your mother. Now come here." "No." It was barely a whisper, but it stopped Vanessa mid-sentence. "What did you say?" "I said no." Kyle's voice was shaking, but he took a step forward, positioning himself slightly in front of me. My shy, quiet stepson, who avoided all conflict, was standing between his mother and me. "Kyle Nathaniel Green, you get over here right now." "Stop yelling at her." The words burst out of Kyle like they'd been building for years. "Stop being mean to her. She's never mean to you. She takes care of me every single day. She makes my breakfast and helps with my homework and comes to all my soccer games and makes sure I have everything I need, and she loves me, and you need to leave my mom alone." The word hung in the air. Mom. He'd called me Mom, not Lauren. Mom. Vanessa's face went white, then red. "I'm your mother, not her. Me. I gave birth to you. I'm your real mother." Kyle was crying now, but his voice did not waver. "You're my mom too. But so is she. And you're always mean to her, and it's not fair. And I'm tired of pretending I don't love her because you told me it makes you sad. I do love her. She's good to me. And I love you too, but you can't keep being mean to people who are nice to me. You just can't." For a moment, I thought Vanessa might continue screaming, but something in Kyle's face, the tears, the trembling, the absolute conviction, seemed to finally break through to her. She looked at her son, at me, then back at Kyle. "You're going to regret this," she said, her voice cold and quiet. "Both of you." She turned and walked to her car, got in, and drove away, leaving Kyle and me standing in the doorway. The moment her car disappeared around the corner, Kyle collapsed. His legs gave out and he sat down hard on the porch step, sobbing. I sat down next to him and pulled him against me, and he clung to me like a drowning person clings to a life raft. "I'm sorry," he kept saying through his tears. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." "Sweetheart, you have nothing to be sorry for. Nothing. I hurt her. I hurt my mom. She's going to hate me." "Oh, Kyle. No. You stood up for what you believe. That's not the same as hurting someone. You were so brave. But I called you Mom. She heard me call you Mom. She's going to think I don't love her anymore." I pulled back so I could look at his face, this sweet boy I'd loved for 3 years. "Kyle, listen to me. Loving me doesn't mean you love your mother less. Love isn't a pie where if you give someone a piece, there's less for everyone else. You can love both of us. You can love lots of people, and your mother needs to learn that." She said I was betraying her by being happy here. My heart broke. That's not fair of her to say. Your happiness isn't a betrayal of anyone. You deserve to be happy everywhere, here with us and at your mom's house too. "I am happy here," Tao whispered. "I'm really happy here. Is that bad?" "No, sweetheart. That's exactly how it should be." We sat there on the porch step until Scott came home an hour later. When he pulled into the driveway and saw us sitting there, his face immediately shifted to concern. "What happened? Are you both okay?" Kyle and I told him everything. Vanessa's unexpected arrival, her demands, her screaming, and Kyle's brave defense. Scott's expression cycled through anger, pride, and deep concern. "I'm calling my lawyer right now. This crosses a line. Showing up, making demands, screaming in front of the neighbors. This is harassment, and it's affecting Kyle." But more importantly, Scott sat down on the step with us and pulled Kyle into a hug. "Buddy, I'm so proud of you. So proud. That took incredible courage." I called Lauren Mom. I didn't mean to hurt Mom Vanessa. "You can call Lauren whatever feels right to you," Scott said firmly. "And loving Lauren, calling her Mom if that's how you feel, doesn't hurt your mother. If it does hurt her feelings, that's something she needs to work through with her own therapist, not something you need to manage." "Really? Really? Kyle, you're 12 years old. Your job is to be a kid, to go to school, to play with your friends, to be loved. Your job is not to manage your mother's emotions or to hide your feelings to make her feel better.
That's way too much responsibility for someone your age." Kyle was quiet for a moment. Then, "Can I ask you something?" "Anything." "Is it okay if I have two moms? Like, Mom Vanessa is my mom because she's my mom, and Lauren is my mom because she chose to be?" I felt tears spring to my eyes. Scott squeezed my hand. "Yes," Scott said. "That's exactly okay. You're lucky, actually. You have two people who are your mom. Not every kid gets that." That evening, after we'd ordered pizza and tried to return to some semblance of normalcy, Kyle appeared in the kitchen where I was cleaning up. He stood in the doorway looking nervous. "Lauren, can I talk to you?" "Of course, sweetie. What's up?" "I wanted to say, I'm sorry if I made things weird by calling you Mom. I know you're technically my stepmom, and maybe you don't want me to call you that, and I can go back to calling you Lauren if—"
Kyle, stop. You can call me whatever feels right to you. If you want to call me Lauren, that's fine. If you want to call me Mom, that's also fine. What matters to me is that you know I love you and that I'm here for you, no matter what you call me. It's just, you do mom things. You make me lunch and help with homework and come to my games and remember that I don't like mushrooms, and you always ask about my day. You're my mom, the mom who's here every day. Is that weird? It's not weird at all. And Kyle, I want you to know something. I didn't choose to love you because I married your dad. I love you because of who you are. You're kind and creative and smart and funny. You're one of my favorite people in the entire world. Being your stepmom, or your mom, or whatever you want to call it, is one of the greatest honors of my life. Kyle hugged me then, really hugged me. Not the stiff obligation hugs he'd given for years, but a real, tight, I need this hug. "I love you, Mom," he whispered. "I love you too, buddy. So much." The weeks that followed were complicated. Scott's lawyer documented everything from the Tuesday confrontation. Vanessa's harassment, combined with evidence Scott had been collecting of her attempts at parental alienation, led to court-ordered modifications. Vanessa's custody time remained the same, but exchanges now had to happen through a neutral third-party service, and she was required to attend co-parenting therapy. More importantly, Kyle started individual therapy with Dr. Mills twice a week instead of once a month. In those sessions, he began unpacking years of loyalty conflict, learning that he was allowed to love both his mothers, that standing up to toxic behavior wasn't disrespectful, and that his feelings mattered. The change in Kyle was remarkable. As he learned to set boundaries with Vanessa, gently but firmly telling her when she said things that hurt him, refusing to be the messenger between his parents, his anxiety decreased dramatically. He smiled more. He brought friends home from school. He joined the drama club and discovered a love of theater. And he started calling me Mom regularly. Not to hurt Vanessa, but because that's genuinely how he felt. When Vanessa would correct him, "You're my mom, Kyle," he'd calmly respond, "You're both my moms. You're my mom who gave birth to me, and she's my mom who takes care of me every day. I'm allowed to love you both." It wasn't always easy. Vanessa struggled with the boundaries, with sharing the title of mother, with accepting that her son had room in his heart for both of us. But slowly, with her own therapist's help, she began to understand that Kyle loving me didn't mean he loved her less. 6 months after that confrontation on our porch, Kyle had a school play. He had a small part. He was still building confidence, but he was excited about it. Scott and I sat in the third row, and Vanessa sat on the opposite side of the auditorium. When Kyle came out for his scene, he scanned the audience, saw all three of us, and his face broke into a huge smile. After the play, during the reception in the cafeteria, Kyle brought both Vanessa and me cookies from the refreshment table. "This one's for you, Mom," handing Vanessa a chocolate chip cookie. "And this one's for you, Mom," handing it to me. He used both titles naturally, comfortably, without anxiety. Vanessa took the cookie. "Thank you, honey. You were wonderful in the play." "Thanks.
Did you see the part where I messed up my line? I thought I was going to die, but then I remembered what Mom Lauren said, that mistakes are just part of performing and nobody cares as much as you think they do. So I just kept going.
I saw Vanessa's jaw tighten slightly at the reference to my advice, but she managed a smile. That was good thinking. It wasn't perfect, it probably never would be, but it was progress. And watching Kyle move freely between his two mothers, comfortable in his love for both of us, I felt something close to peace. That night, as I was tucking Kyle into bed, he looked up at me seriously. "Mom, can I tell you something?" "Always." "I'm glad you didn't give up on me, even when I was mean to you, even when I wouldn't hug you back or when I'd ignore you. You just kept being nice to me. That's how I knew you really loved me, because you didn't stop, even when I was being bad." "You were never bad, Kyle. You were confused and scared and caught in the middle. That's really different from being bad." "I know that now. Dr. Mills explained it, but I wanted to say thank you for waiting for me to figure it out, for being patient, for being my mom even when I wouldn't call you that." I kissed his forehead. "You never have to thank me for loving you. That's not something you earn. It's just something you have. Always. Okay?" "Okay. I love you, Mom." "I love you too, buddy. So much." As I turned off his light and closed his door, I thought about that terrible Tuesday afternoon when Vanessa had stood in our driveway screaming, when Kyle had found a courage I didn't know he possessed, when he'd called me Mom for the first time. I'd thought, in that moment, that I was being defended. But looking back, I realized it was something else entirely. Kyle hadn't been defending me. He'd been defending himself. His right to love whom he loved. His right to feel happy without guilt. His right to have multiple people in his life who cared for him. He'd been finding his voice, and in doing so, he'd given me the greatest gift anyone had ever given me, the trust of a child who'd been taught not to trust, the love of a boy who'd been told that love was betrayal, the title of Mom from someone who had every reason to withhold it. 3 years of patience, of consistency, of loving without expectation of return, all of it had led to this: a quiet, sweet boy who now knew he deserved to be happy, who could set boundaries, who understood that families come in all forms, and that love multiplies rather than divides. I wasn't the mother who gave birth to Kyle, but I was the mother who showed up every day with patience and love and the absolute conviction that he was worth it. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything. What did you think of Kyle's courage in standing up for himself and his right to love both mothers? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story about blended families, chosen love, and children finding their voice touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more meaningful stories every day. Don't forget to click the notification bell so you never miss our next uplifting tale. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.